So for quite some time now, Cubase has had Groove Agent included, but we've taken it one step further and pretty much redesigned the whole entire Groove Agent concept. So now what we have inside of Cubase is pretty much a drum sampler. So let me just open up the first one here and you can see what the interface looks like. So brand new, you can see on the left-hand side, we've still got our MPC style pad set up there. So if you love MPC style players, then Groove Agent's pretty much the software version of that. But there's quite a few things we can do to the drum sounds and do with Groove Agent in terms of interacting with our track. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few things that you can do inside of Groove Agent, but then show you a few little tricks that we can use out on the project window to try and come up with different sounds and integrate them into a project. I've got a blank template here, or a blank project with 3 tracks in it. So I'm just going to highlight these tracks. I'm going to go to a brand new feature inside of Cubase before I even touch Groove Agent, and this is track versions. So I'm going to say new version. Now, if I click on this, I'm going to say scratch 1. So that's my scratch track 1, scratch 2. Great. So now I've got 2 different versions of these 3 tracks. Now, if you've not seen track versions yet, you're probably wondering what on earth is going on here. So just let me show you by, I guess, creating some music. So let's go to my first instance of Groove Agent. So if I open it up, you can click here. Right. In Groove Agent, it's fairly simple in terms of getting content and getting sound because there's loads of different kits. Once again, a lot of these kits and grooves are created by Alan Morgan. So I mentioned earlier he's worked with 9 Inch Nails and Taylor Swift and a lot of highly successful international acts. So he's put together a whole lot of sounds and grooves, which we can come through and trigger by using our mouse or by playing the keyboard. So if you like getting your hands dirty and actually playing by recording stuff, then it's very easy to do that. As you can see, turn on the click track. Okay, so a very simple little groove there. I'm playing it out of time, so I'm just quickly going to quantize it. And now if we hit play. Okay, so that's pretty much in time. Let's take 2 bars of that. So let's say we want to work with those 2 bars to start with. Maybe it's a minimalistic type of approach. We've got those 2 guys. So I can now, copy that if I want. Whoops. Never easy working with laptops. Let me just drag this out. There we go. And now, okay, so I've got 2 bars there. So that's my own, I guess, version of it. Well, my own creation. But let's say you're a bit stuck and you want to come up with maybe something that you wouldn't normally come up with. So there's another way that we can actually create music or create beats inside of Cubase. So what I'm going to do now is come down to track versions and go down to scratch 2, and you can see immediately that drum groove that I very simply programmed before is gone. So now I'm going to come down here to my MIDI inserts and I'm going to grab my mate here, Beat Designer, and now I can start entering notes using a grid. Put some hats in. Let's try. Okay, so you get the idea. So we're creating a groove just by using a grid type formation. Now that I've got that groove, I can drag that groove down here and I can open this guy up and say, give me the drum map. So create drum map from instrument. Now when I load it up, you can see we've got the good old-fashioned drum editor. And all of the instruments on the left-hand side here correspond exactly with all the instruments inside Groove Agent. But now that I've got that, I could set this guy playing on a loop and say, right, well, do I like that? Or do I just quickly want to cross back to my first track and have a listen to that? And turn Beat Designer off. So my first one, Okay, so you can see just instantly by flicking to scratch 1 and scratch 2, I can actually, listen or audition these different drum parts and then decide which one I want. So that's one way of using tracked versions over here on the left-hand side. So we could almost hypothetically create different versions of songs depending on the tracked version or the way that we've recorded it. Now I'm going to go back into Groove Agent and show you something else that's pretty neat. So we can do that, or we can come over here into pattern, and you can see now we've got different patterns that we can actually play live over the top of the track that we've got going. So you can trigger these using, say, a MIDI keyboard, using pads, using an electronic drum kit. Anything that's got a MIDI output on it, you can use to trigger these patterns and grooves inside of Groove Agent live. So the other cool thing is, this is the track that I did myself, the MIDI track. I can now drag this in, and you can see I have a whole library full of different grooves. So it's not just the kits that I can change and the different sounds. I can now come through and load different MIDI files or MIDI patterns in, which I can use to trigger the drum sounds that I have here. So you can see how we can use patterns very easily within Groove Agent. But as I said before, Groove Agent is actually a drum sampler. So I'm going to load this third instance of it and just hit solo. Now we can also come in and create our own drum track or drum kit. So if you're using sound replacement, let's say you're in the studio, or you're not in the studio, let's say you've recorded in a bedroom or something like that, a drum kit, and you're thinking, yeah, kick, snare don't sound that great. We can use Cubase to actually take the MIDI track from what's been played, so in effect sound replacement, and then now we can come to Groove Agent and we can actually use our media bay to start building our own drum kit. So check this out. We just simply find something we like and drag it over. Now, because we've got oversampling, I can find different kick drums and I can load them in. And as soon as I load them in, sorry, I loaded that into the wrong place. As soon as I load it in, you can see instantly here, we've got the two samples. So I can control the velocity crossover point. So if I play very soft and very loud, it's going to switch in between the two different samples. So lots of options there in terms of actually being able to create your own sound, but also layer sounds so that the instrument sounds more realistic. Because if you're a drummer and you're playing a very small note on a snare drum, it's going to be a ghost note. So it's not going to be exactly the same note as you had before when you were actually smacking it. So we want to be able to try and recreate as much of that, as much of the dynamics, I guess, and the velocity that the drummer's actually playing the drum kit with. The other thing we have, which is pretty neat, is the ability to work with samples. So I'm just going to grab some samples and I'm going to drag it across. And now I've got a sample in there. So if I go over to my sample, I can say no loop. So now it's going to trigger for however long I'm holding it down for. I can go through and edit the sample itself. If I want, I can come through here to the main window and I can work with, I guess, all the typical things that you'd normally have with a drum sample, but things like pitch. So if we want to get this guy in. Okay, so you notice that slowed down, but now if we go back to audio warp and select music, and now you can see it's gone back to the original pitch. And one thing that's worth remembering there is it's not just gone back, to the original pitch. If we bring out anything that's got harmonic and melodic content from the media bay, providing we've got the settings turned on, it will automatically time stretch and transpose into the key of our tempo. So there's no more importing the old-fashioned way and then trying to time stretch it. Cubase will automatically analyze it and do all that for you. Especially the transpose function's very neat with the new elastic audio pitch shifting and time shifting algorithm. Okay, so we've got a sample. Let's have a look at some other things that we can do. We've got about 5 different types of filters. So if we want to put distortion, if we want to change the envelope, we can, and then we can come down here to the envelope amount. Yep. All the normal things you'd have, like cutoff and resonance. One of the coolest things about having it set up this way, though, is the fact that we can actually set all of these to different quick controls. So if we want to, we can right mouse click and say learn CC, and then I can go to a MIDI instrument somewhere, and I've just gone up to my Yamaha keyboard there. I've got the Mox F6 here. And as soon as I right mouse click on it, I can actually start moving my cutoff around. So I can use, I guess, different types of controllers to control the parameters. I can also change any of these parameters if I want, but even neater than that is the ability just to right mouse click and say, show me the automation track. So as soon as we've got the automation track here, we no longer have to actually do it manually. We can, if we want, by hitting read and write up the top here. But the other thing we can do is just get the pen. So let's take right off, go back to our project window, grab the draw pen, and we can draw in the automation ourselves. So that is pretty cool. Just right mouse click, create yourself a track. One other quick thing I want to show you is the slice function. So we've got a sample. Let's maybe, turn the filter off. So back to normal. Let's go over to slice. And you can see now we can create slices from that loop. And now we can actually scroll in between all these slices. So the cool thing about being able to scroll in between all of these slices is, let's say we wanted to edit just that one part of the loop. So now we can go into filter, and we can turn hard clip on, and we can really distort the instrument that we're trying to edit. So maybe that guy, let's say pitch, let's drop the pitch on that. Even better is the ability to add effects. So we've got 4 auxiliary effects sends here. So I'm going to select that patch. I'm going to come up to the amp section of Groove Agent, turn the auxiliary 1 up, and then let's go to the mixer, auxiliary. Let's put a reverb over the top of it. And now, so maybe it needs to have the volume turned down. I'm doing this quite quickly. Of course, you'd spend a lot more time editing this sort of thing. But now that I've got that, I can go over to my Groove Agent track here. So let's make this a little bit larger. And now, pattern. And you can see the sample is now loaded over into the pattern bank. But if I pick up on this pattern here and drag it down, I can now re-trigger that pattern inside of the main window of Cubase. You can hear the small glitch there where I changed the actual sound itself. But what's cool is now we can actually pick up on any one of these components of the loop, and we can completely, I guess, change the order of the instruments inside of the loop. So loop mash, we can change individual sounds, we can layer sounds. We've got loads of cool filters in terms of effects. If we have a look here, you've got loads of different options there to shape your tools or to shape the sound that you're using. We can also turn on individual outputs. So each one of our instruments here can have its own place or its own individual channel in the Cubase mixer, which then means that we can go and add effects and start editing them on their own, I guess even automating the volume of the sound on the actual Cubase project window and the mix window. So we can manipulate sound, we can work with patterns, we can work with, I guess, live performance using Cubase, so we can trigger any sounds using any MIDI controller that we want. In addition to that, we've got effects, and we've got the ability to work with samples, slice samples up and have samples on any pad. So I think there's about 128 pads included inside the instrument section in Cubase. So Groove Agent SE4 it's a new monster basically. You can do so much more with the new version than you could with the other one. As you can see, you could basically drag and drop from any area of Cubase and start working with drum sounds, make the beats. Cool.